Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Women Petpreneurs podcast with your host, Mary Oquendo. My guest today is Tiffany Neal. And I asked her specifically here because I have questions about some stuff she does. But we're going to start off with Tiffany, how'd you get involved in the pet industry?
I would say primarily because I'm super antisocial. And ever since I was a child, I preferred to, if we were going to visit anybody or even among close family and friends, I would always want to go hang out with their pet when we went to visit, not so much all of the humans. And so from the very beginning, I had pet sitting jobs for when I was very small. And then, you know, thought I would want to get into veterinary medicine and was told by my high school um, counselor that I should aim a little lower. So I didn't go to, I decided not to.
Wow.
I,
Wow.
and I knew that I really liked science and I was good at it. I was good at school. I don't really understand. I mean, in hindsight, why she would have told me that, but
Can I ask you a question? How old are you?
51.
All right. So I'm 61, and I think it's a generational thing. Because I know when I went to my high school guidance counselor, my options were to be a nurse, to be a
Right.
teacher,
Yeah.
or get married.
Bingo.
Okay.
Why
Those,
community would I not be aiming for an MRS? I was more interested in getting like a master's of science in something, but really where I grew up, it was more, the things that we were pushed to do was catering toward how to become like a wife and a homemaker.
yeah. And I think that was such a disservice to our generation. So I'm just going to say it right now. Anybody who's listening to this and your high school counselor is telling you, and don't get me wrong,
And
there's
lower.
absolutely nothing wrong with being a nurse or a teacher if that is what you want to do. Okay. But to be told those are your only options, that's wrong. And she
Right.
told you to aim lower.
Exactly. I'll never forget that meeting. I mean, you can't make that stuff up, really.
No, and you know what? And I absolutely believe you because, I can recall the conversation I had with my guidance counselor.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? I mean, I went to school, I went to college, and I thought I was going to be a vet. But what I really wanted to do, and it was so discouraged that I had wanted to go into biology, you know?
Uh-huh.
I actually really, if I'm honest with myself, what I wanted to do was marine biology.
Really? Oh, I've got stories there too. I used to work at Moat Marine up in
Okay,
Sarasota.
cool, cool. Okay, do you own your own business right now?
Yeah, I created my own salon. I do one-on-one grooming. I created it just like a house because I did house call grooming before this. How I saved up the money to create a salon. But I wanted it to feel like a house because I liked grooming in the houses that I groomed in, but I couldn't schlep tools anymore and was kind of tired of working with the customers right there too. So
Okay,
anyway,
so and
you
the
know,
thing
so
is, my mind is really blown by the whole aim lower, because what I know about Tiffany, which you're all about to find out about Tiffany, is she has scientific papers published.
right. I was a
Okay.
writer and I was a researcher for years.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. But anyway, so tell me about, first of all, about those scientific papers you have published.
People don't ask me that very much, so it's pretty fun. The first paper actually comes from I went to Oregon State University, and I wanted to go into anything biology again, but I also liked research because I have that science, that kind of brain. And so as an undergraduate, I had a double major in chemistry and bioresource research. And I got a grant for undergraduate research project. And I was really interested in animal behavior at first, but I was so tired of people anthropomorphizing how animal behavior is logged or recorded for research purposes that I ended up diving into insects because it's much more easy to quantitatively describe what you're seeing them do instead of putting a human type spin on it. So I got into an economically important insect because those are the ones where you get research money, grant money. And so I fell in love with the Douglas fir beetle, which is like this beetle the size of a tic tac that attacks Douglas fir trees in mass, and their brood survival is dependent on the death of the tree. So that's why it's such an economically important insect, is because a lot of economically important trees are, ruined because of them. At any rate, so the first paper is actually that first research project I did that years later got enough people to help me, get how do you say, you have to go through a process of having like different scientists review the paper. So you have to kind of apply to different journals with your research project. And it's similar to applying for grant money, and that there's this whole application process. So anyway, years later, my undergraduate research project got published, and it had to do with, that's a big long story, having to do with the relationship between blue stain fungi and Douglas fir beetles and the Douglas fir tree. But
Okay. Can you sum up what the relationship is?
Sure. Western larch trees and Douglas fir trees emit similar bouquets of terpenes, which are like aromatic chemicals. And those aromatic chemicals are used as cues by the Douglas fir beetle. And some of those cues will tell the Douglas fir beetle that the tree is decadent and dying or weakened from some kind of something, either age or something. And Douglas fir beetles will then kind of hone in onto the area where those aromatics are coming from. And then they look for the bowl of a tree, for the shape of a tree, and attack. Now, there's been reports of Douglas fir beetles attacking Western larches in the vicinity of weakened Douglas fir trees. So like the beetles are attacking both Western larch and Douglas fir trees. The interesting thing is that Western larch trees can survive the attacks, and Douglas fir trees don't survive the attacks. So the Douglas fir beetles cannot survive in Western larch trees, but they can in Douglas fir trees. And my question was two things. Is there something about the Western larch defensive system, the Western larch tree defensive system, or is it something in the chemical makeup that makes them resistant? Or why are Western larch trees sometimes attacked, but they are resistant to the Douglas fir beetle? So my first research project had to do with, well, is it this blue stain fungi that Douglas fir beetles carry on them? It's the only way that blue stain fungi lives, is when it's impregnated into a tree via a Douglas fir beetle boring in underneath the bark. So I thought, well, maybe the blue stain fungi can't live within the Western larch tree the way that it can live and grow inside the living tissues of the Douglas fir tree. So I went out I got a grant to study that. And yes, we found that the blue stain fungi just cannot grow as rapidly, grow at the same rate, grow in the same way at all in a Western larch tree as it can in a Douglas fir tree. Thus, the defensive mechanisms of the Western larch tree continue to be strong enough to thwart the beetle attack. And so all of the eggs and the brood that the Douglas fir beetles try to lay under the bark end up succumbing to the defenses of the tree, and they don't make it. And the tree usually gets weakened, but lives, compared to Douglas fir trees, which die within the same year or at least 1 year later of being attacked.
Okay. Okay, that's very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Interesting.
All
right.
Okay, so one of the things I like when I go to botanical gardens, I love it when they have the butterfly gardens, the butterfly exhibits.
Me too.
Okay, so I always, if they have it, I'm going to be there. I love the butterfly gardens.
Yeah, it'd be hard to pull me out.
Yeah, so I probably spend most of my time there, and like, yeah, I'll look at roses later. I want to look at the butterflies. So I know you're involved with putting together a particular butterfly garden, correct? Tell us about that.
Quite a few, but I actually moved from Oregon to Florida for that job opportunity to put together climate controlled, year-round living butterfly exhibit. And it turned into a bigger thing because it was at a hands-on science and technology center, where we also wanted it to be about what Florida native habitats were about, what you can find there, and other unique things that I wanted to add, like a observation beehive. And at any rate, that was in Sarasota, and it was a very fabulous exhibit. But once I had put it together, we put together all kinds of educational programs for ages young and old, and we had outreach programs. Oh, I'm stepping on my table, lowering it. Then and putting together all the standard operating procedures for the butterfly exhibit. I had to go visit butterfly farms, and I got so into that I ended up creating my own butterfly farm eventually. And that was the other business that I started.
Okay, so I got a question. Let's dive into business here for a second. You created a standard operating procedure manual for butterfly gardens.
No, for what we called the habitat. It was a walkthrough exhibit at they called it Gee Whiz. It was the Gulf Coast Wonder and Imagination Zone, a hands-on science and technology center for kids. There were field trips that would come through there, and it was open to the public, and we would have evening events. And at any rate, it was a climate controlled exhibit with a waterfall fed pond and an observation beehive and snakes and frogs and many, many species of plants and butterflies flying around. And so if you were to volunteer at Gee Whiz and you said you wanted to volunteer in the habitat exhibit, then you would have to go through this training, or I had a few employees to help maintain the habitat exhibit. So all of that had standard operating procedures I had put together.
Okay, so would you say those standard operating procedures was very important to the workings of that?
It was key.
Oh, thank you. It was key, correct? All right, because
thing that could make everybody understand, first of all, why the place needed the things that it needed, and exactly how to make sure you were doing what the place needed.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to jump off on a tangent right here, because I just finished doing my standard operating procedure manual for my business, which is now Positive Educational Training. Okay.
Congrats.
And it's a single run. I'm the only person running this business. It is 100 pages. Okay. And it took a while to do it, but
yeah.
You know what? Someone can step in and do the things I do if they have to.
Right.
All right. It is really key to a business to have a standard operating procedure manual. All right. It's the lifeblood of your business. And when I go to sell Positive Ed, that adds value.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? So
yeah, business more than just a thing that you run and operate. It makes it like its own kind of entity with its instruction manual, like some piece of equipment you'd buy for your kitchen.
Okay. In fact, I'm writing that down on my thing because I'm doing a new workshop, not on SLPs. I already have that, but another workshop on on thinking like a boss, thinking like an entrepreneur. And so now, right now, I'm in the note-taking stage of it. So as I think of things, I just write things down that I want to include in it. So, but anyway, back to the podcast. Okay. So
Notebook.
do you have a favorite butterfly?
Yes, I do. Here in Florida, anyway. I like to kind of, keep my favorites where I'm at.
All right. So tell me about your favorite butterfly.
Favorites for different reasons. I have two favorites. It's real hard to say which one would be my favorite.
Dude, then tell me about both of them.
Well, I'll give the short. There's a species of butterfly that I was really successful in growing when I had my butterfly farm out in Mayaca City, and it's called the giant swallowtail. And I finally attracted it into my yard, and I felt like it was the most glorious thing when I finally started seeing it. Now I see it regularly. I think one of the reasons I like it the most is because it's got the widest wingspan of all the butterflies in Florida. So pretty much anybody, when they see it, is going to be like, wow, But my true favorite butterfly is the zebra longwing, which happens to be the Florida State butterfly, but it's a social butterfly, and it roosts in numbers. So like really well established populations of zebra longwings may roost in numbers upwards of 55 individuals. They've got a whole bunch of really unique traits about their little way of even digesting food is a little bit different because they can metabolize pollen, whereas most butterflies only sip nectar, so they get like a source of protein. They're more long-lived species of butterfly, and I love their hovering type flight pattern. And they like semi-shady areas, which makes them a great exhibit butterfly.
All right. So I'm going to tell you why I was so excited to find out about you and butterflies. All right. So I'm here in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Sequim. Okay. So I'm looking to attract more butterflies to my gardens. And I'm starting off with a particular garden that's going to be outside my office. And it's going to be a memorial garden to my dog Spirit. Right. And so Spirit was a white dog. Right. He was a white husky.
Right.
And my vision for this is to have like an all white garden, except for one red, something that's a focal point that's red. And I would like to attract butterflies. So it is south facing. Okay.
Good.
But it's in the shade of the house. So it's up against the house, but it's south facing.
Yes.
So tell me, what should I be planting?
Up against the house presents a little bit of a thing for any white species of butterflies that I'm thinking of.
Oh, no, it doesn't have to be white butterflies. My plants, I would like to be white.
You'd like the plant to be white. Well, then I'm trying to think of white plants that, white
was white not really an option if I'm going to attract butterflies?
I don't want to say no, but let me just tell you that most butterflies predominantly see colors like red.
Oh, okay.
So like what I like to tell people is, if you plant it, they will come. Plant is usually a red nectar providing plant that has multiple blooms per stalk. So it's a compound bloom, usually red blooms, like pentas, pentas, that kind of flower that comes in a cluster type bloom. The red ones, for some reason, are the most attractive. You can get It's
So
the
if I
so I
reversed it,
mix white pentas and red pentas and make it a white and red thing.
all right. So what if I then focus more on just having all red plants? The focus plant maybe be a white rose bush and then red surrounding it.
Yes. You would definitely get a lot more butterflies if you put any nectar providing plant that's red around. Like, I don't know. I don't remember if jatropha grows by you. Do you know what jatropha is?
I will find out.
Anyway, it's a great, excuse me, it can get kind of like a shrub depending on how you prune it, or it can be kind of, anyway, it's a very resilient plant out here that has a red bloom as well. But pentas is something that, you know, I think you can put in any butterfly garden and you will get butterflies, especially the red one.
Okay,
Pen-
so all
Pentas, like Pentas.
right, I'm gonna look it up because I'm gonna have to start some. The garden I'm gonna start early spring, though I may like dig it out in the fall to like prep it for the spring. But we'll see. But we'll see. So then I should be doing some research on my own. Now, being again here in the Pacific Northwest, what butterflies could I attract if I had a butterfly garden?
Well, you do. Well, I mean, certain times of the year you can get monarchs there.
No, I've seen monarchs. I have a couple orange ones
Yeah.
that
So
that I've seen in the area.
if you plant milkweed, now that's going to be something where you've got to look at which species of milkweed grows best in your zone, because like I'm zone 10 tropical, and that's mostly what I know about for plants.
I believe I'm zone 6, but I could be wrong on that.
You're pretty up there.
Yeah, my neighbor across the street is a master gardener, so I will have a conversation. I will be bringing cookies over to her house to have a conversation with soon as I'm deciding on what plants, because that particular garden, I really want to see the butterflies come.
Yeah, I also feel like you have a lot of yellow butterflies up there in the
Honestly, I've seen a couple of yellow, but I've seen more of the orange monarchs than I have than the yellows.
yeah. You also Gulf fritillaries up there. Which
I'm sorry, repeat that.
you get fritillaries up there. I think they're called variegated. They're a different kind of fritillary over by you, but they're orange. And you also get painted ladies over there that are orange.
Oh,
You're gonna have to get a butterfly key.
I'm
Start
gonna have to get a butterfly book. Yes.
logging which ones you see. It sounds silly at first, but once you've seen more than 6, it gets exciting to keep adding, and it keeps you wanting to learn about which ones you haven't seen yet that are in your area, and what plants their larvae like to eat, because that's what really ultimately is going to attract the butterflies to your butterfly garden, is if you have the plants, that species that you already know are around you. If you have the plants that they like to lay eggs on, then you'll invite them in. That combined with plants that provide nectar, blooming plants.
Now, I've been in this area for 4 years, and when I first moved here, COVID hit. So I got to see like nothing when I first moved here. And now it's trying to play catch up. And one thing I haven't been in this area is I haven't been to a botanical garden.
Yeah, you got to go and then sit there for a while and see which butterflies you see the most of, and then see if you can, figure out which, they call them larval plants or host plants, those butterflies need, and then get those in your garden. But definitely try to get some of those red pentas too.
Oh no, it'll make my list. I have a couple really good nurseries in the area.
Right?
So like not just like the Home Depots, I mean, real garden nurseries. In my area, there's, to my knowledge, there's like 4 of them. So I should be able to tap their brains as well.
Yeah. Now, if you get really, really into it and you end up finding that you're getting butterflies to lay eggs, and you start to see that your host plants are getting dramatically defoliated on the
Okay.
verge of death, and you feel like there's not enough foliage for all of your caterpillars to eat, and then you get this urge to go to the nursery and buy more plants that have the foliage for the caterpillars to feed on immediately so they don't go hungry. This is a common problem for people that are butterfly enthusiasts. Just be very careful that the plants that you're purchasing haven't had a pesticide application recently, or you could feel, get some sick caterpillars. It's kind of
Yeah,
a bummer.
we don't want that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just say I had my host plants that are going to be good for the larvae. Should then there also be other plants that just are like very prolific leafy?
I like to mix together near my host plant something that has almost a similar shape or texture of leaf, because as that host plant again gets defoliated or the leaves start to look cruddy because they've got holes and they're half chewed from successfully becoming caterpillar food, then you have this plant behind it that's still looking robust and has regular foliage, so that your butterfly garden doesn't sometimes look shabby, because I think that's what turns some people off on maintaining their butterfly gardens is either they get a pest, and like all gardens you have your ups and downs and sometimes have to start fresh. But if you have really well chewed on plants, and that's a turn off for some people. So if you have in the backdrop something that maintains its foliage, it also becomes a little bit more protection for the caterpillars once they go to hang somewhere and form their chrysalis or cocoon, because most of them wander off of their host plant to do that, and then they need something sturdy to spin their silk pad and cling to for that part of their life stage.
All right, so if I was looking for maybe a book on butterflies, like a beginner book on putting together butterfly gardens, do you have any recommendations?
Gosh, all mine that I can think of are like Florida's, Florida based ones. Like I can't really think offhand of any one book, because I think all of them have all those basics that we just talked about. If you put together a butterfly book and you don't have those things in there, then it's probably not going to get published. So I think my biggest tip is find one that says something like Washington's fabulous butterflies. And then in there, you should have all of the details about the host plants. Even some of them are trees. They're not all, herbaceous little shrubby plants or you know what I mean?
Right.
That's one of my favorite ones. It doesn't really say so much, well, one of my favorite ones about butterfly gardening is, I believe, something along the lines of Florida's fabulous butterflies. But so that's why I'm saying that. I
All
feel
right, so
like,
I'll go over to Amazon and put in Washington's fabulous butterflies and see what comes up for the search.
yeah, and then say gardening. But I would also recommend, not just like butterfly gardening for dummies, but it's kind of nice to get a book that's, I'm just going to say, written by a scientist,
Ah, so do you have such a book?
like an entomologist.
All right, so the
Oh,
question is,
wouldn't
do,
that be great?
do you have such a book?
No, but I know in Florida, one of my favorite PhDs is Jarrett Daniels. He's up in Gainesville, University of Florida. They've got a really great exhibit up there. So that's how I that's how I came across some of my favorite information. Was I found a PhD in entomology who focuses on butterflies in Florida when I first came to Florida to start that exhibit at Gee Whiz. So most of my butterfly research is actually based on knowledge that I gained after moving to Florida, not knowledge that I gained while getting my degrees in Oregon.
Okay. Okay. So, to that guidance counselor who told you to aim lower.
I'm not going to say her name because on Facebook I've seen like fellow high school classmates of mine all saying how much they loved her. Well, maybe it was me. I don't know.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. That guidance counselor, though,
All
or to
right.
anything to their guidance counselor. Take
I
it with
don't
a
know. Maybe send her a link to this podcast.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That's an interesting idea.
I honestly, I would. I wish I could, you know, have another conversation with my guidance counselor, like as an adult. And I'm like, dude, what were you thinking telling me what you told me?
Well, this is my spin, though. I'm not perfect. And, heck, I may have given some crumb dumb advice at some point. So, I'd give her the whatever. Just
Yeah.
careful to take advice from.
Yes. Oh, yes. So
Yeah,
maybe she was having a bad day. But anyway,
maybe.
where where do you see yourself going? Do you see yourself doing more butterfly gardens?
It's a good question. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. You know what? And that's fine too. Because if you would have asked me last year if I had any plans to do a butterfly garden, that I would have looked at you like, yeah, I don't know about that.
Right.
Okay.
I've got my own. So, I'll keep focusing on that. But I don't
And it
know about
was something as simple as I'm thinking I want to do some sort of memorial garden for Spirit, but I didn't know what I wanted. And as I'm thinking this and sitting on my deck, this little orange butterfly is just flitting right past me. And I'm like, okay, that's a
Right.
suggestion.
Yeah. They're magical.
Yeah. So now when after I get off the podcast with you, I'm heading over to Amazon to see what book I can get.
Yeah, that's always such a good place to search for books.
Yeah. So I'll get a book, sit down with it and kind of decide. And thank you thank you. You know what? A lot of times I choose guests based on what information I need from them. So thank you.
That's awesome.
All
I
right.
love to share that information.
So Tiffany, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this. I really appreciate it.
That's fun. Thank you for asking me.
So everybody join us next week when I interview somebody else doing something really fascinating and is in the pet industry. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.